The red ships came from the darkness of space like angry metal insects, thousands of them blocking out the stars around Earth. Admiral Corvin sat in his command chair, watching the blue planet below, feeling bored already. This was his 300th conquest, and they all went the same way. First came the threats, then the crying and begging, then the surrender, and finally another world joined the Empire. The humans had built a small space station for the meeting, nothing impressive compared to his massive warship. Admiral Corvin's ship alone was bigger than most human cities. His claws tapped against the metal armrest as he waited for the human representative to arrive. Ambassador Lee Minho stepped into the cold meeting room, his black suit neat and pressed. The walls around them showed holographic images of the Empire's fleet, thousands of warships pointing their weapons at Earth. Any normal person would be shaking with fear, but Minho's face showed nothing at all. Corvin's voice came through the translation machine, sounding like grinding metal. "I am Admiral Corvin of the Velthic Empire. We have conquered 400 worlds across this galaxy. Your planet will be number 401. Minho said nothing. He just stood there with his hands behind his back, listening. "Here are your choices," Corvin continued, enjoying this part. "You have exactly 72 hours to surrender completely. Give us control of your governments, your armies, and your people. We will allow some of you to live as workers for the Empire." The alien leaned forward in his chair. "Or we will turn your pretty blue world into a ball of fire and glass. Every human city will burn. Every human child will die screaming, 'We have done this before, and we will do it again.'" Minho finally spoke, his voice calm and steady. "And if we refuse?" Corvin laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Then you die, all of you. We have weapons that can crack planets in half. Your little spaceships are toys compared to our fleet." The holographic displays around them showed images of other worlds the Empire had destroyed. Cities turned to ash. Oceans boiled away, entire continents cracked and burning. Corvin had shown these images to terrify hundreds of species into surrender. Minho looked at each image carefully, his expression never changing. When the slideshow ended, he straightened his tie and said one simple word that would change everything. "No." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Corvin's eyes widened in surprise. In 300 conquests, no species had ever refused. This quickly. Usually there were hours of crying and begging first. "Excuse me?" Corvin asked. "No," Minho repeated, turning toward the door. "Earth refuses your ultimatum." "Ambassador!" Corvin shouted, standing up from his chair. "You cannot be serious. Do you understand what we will do to your world?" Minho stopped at the doorway and turned back one last time. His voice was still calm, but there was something cold in his eyes now. "Admiral, humanity has been preparing to burn for 200 years. The real question is whether you and your empire are ready to burn with us." The ambassador walked out, leaving Corvin staring at the empty doorway in shock. As Minho's small shuttle flew back toward Earth, the Empire's communication systems picked up thousands of human radio signals. Panicked voices were talking about something called Project Stardust and final protocols. Military commanders were giving orders about mountain facilities and quantum activation. Corvin listened to these intercepted messages and laughed. "Listen to them panic," he told his officers. "They are talking about their secret weapons like frightened children telling ghost stories. But down on Earth, things were not as they seemed." Dr. Park Jinwoo walked through a tunnel carved deep inside a mountain, a place so secret that officially it did not exist. His security badge opened door after door, each one leading deeper underground. The final chamber was massive, filled with computers and screens that hummed with power. Dr. Park had been waiting in this room for 30 years, hoping this day would never come. But now it was here, and he had work to do. His fingers moved across keyboards that glowed with strange blue light. These were not ordinary computers. They used quantum technology that most humans did not even know existed. As he typed, "Ancient," systems began waking up all across the solar system. Hidden installations on the moon powered up after decades of silence. Secret bases built inside asteroids started their activation sequences. Deep space probes that had been drifting through the darkness for generations suddenly came alive. Dr. Park looked at the main screen as it showed him a map of the solar system. Hundreds of red dots were appearing, each one representing a facility that was now ready for war. These were humanity's real weapons, built in secret over 2 centuries of preparation. Atlas system coming online, he whispered to the empty room. God help us all. Outside, Admiral Corvin was preparing for what he thought would be an easy victory, not knowing that humanity had been ready for this fight long before his ships had even left their homeworld. The 72 hours passed like a countdown to doomsday. When the deadline arrived, Admiral Corvin's fleet moved into position around Earth like a pack of wolves surrounding a wounded deer. The massive warships were so large they cast shadows over entire cities below. Corvin stood on his bridge, watching the blue planet through the viewport. He had done this dance so many times before. First would come the desperate last-minute plea for mercy, then the pathetic final attack with whatever weapons the species could manage. Finally, the surrender and begging. It was always the same story. Deploy the siege formation, he ordered his crew. The largest ships, called dreadnoughts, positioned themselves over New York, London, Tokyo, and other major human cities. Their weapons could level entire continents with a single blast. Smaller attack ships spread out across Earth's orbit, hunting down civilian spacecraft trying to escape the planet. These ships were like metal sharks, fast and deadly, designed to catch anything that tried to run. Admiral, his communications officer reported, "We are receiving a transmission from the human government." Corvin smiled. Here it comes, he thought. The begging and pleading. Put it through. But instead of surrender, Earth's orbital defense stations suddenly came alive. Ancient satellites that had been floating in space for decades started firing everything they had. Nuclear missiles streaked toward the alien fleet like angry hornets. "They are actually fighting back," Subcommander Zeltrix said, sounding amused. How refreshing! The human weapons hit the Empire's ships and exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Nuclear warheads that could destroy entire cities detonated against the alien hulls. Kinetic projectiles moving at incredible speeds slammed into their armor. And absolutely nothing happened. The Empire's energy shields absorbed every blast without even flickering. Their technology was so advanced that humanity's most powerful weapons were like throwing rocks at a tank. Pathetic, Zeltrix muttered, watching another wave of human missiles explode uselessly against their defenses. These primitives still use nuclear fusion. We mastered that technology 1,000 years ago. The alien crew laughed as wave after wave of human attacks failed completely. To them, it was like watching children throw toys at adults. They had seen this same desperate last stand from hundreds of other species, but the aliens were not paying attention to the right things. Each nuclear warhead and kinetic projectile that hit their ships carried something special, tiny machines smaller than dust particles. These nanoscale drones were so small that the Empire's sensors could not detect them. When the weapons exploded against the alien shields, these microscopic spies spread out across the hulls of the ships. They began scanning everything: the frequency of the energy shields, the composition of the armor, the location of weapon systems, even the pattern of the ship's communication signals. Deep underground in a secret bunker, Captain Kim Soo-jin sat, surrounded by computer screens. Her team of technicians worked frantically as data poured in from every failed human attack. Shield frequency mapped, one technician reported. Weapon system locations confirmed, said another. Communication encryption cracked, a third added. With each seemingly useless human attack, they learned more about their enemy. The Empire thought they were watching humanity's pathetic final stand, but they were actually giving away all their secrets to invisible spies. Above ground, the Empire's bombardment began. Massive energy beams lanced down from the alien ships, turning human military bases into glass craters. Cities started to burn as the aliens demonstrated their overwhelming power. People ran screaming through the streets as buildings collapsed around them. The sky filled with smoke and the sound of destruction. To anyone watching, it looked like humanity was being crushed exactly as Admiral Corvin had predicted, but far beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a facility buried so deep that earthquakes could not reach it. Ancient systems were finally waking up. Dr. Park Jinwoo stood before a massive computer that filled an entire underground cavern. His hands shook as he entered the final activation codes. He was 70 years old now, and he had spent his entire adult life preparing for this moment. His hair was grey and his back was bent, but his mind was still sharp. "All stealth probes report ready," a computer voice announced. "Solar manipulation." "Arrays are online," came another report. "Gravitational lenses are in position." Dr. Park looked at the main screen, which showed him a view of the solar system. Hundreds of tiny dots were scattered throughout space, machines that had been hiding in the darkness for decades, waiting for this exact moment. Each dot represented years of secret work. Humanity had been preparing for this war since before most of the current generation was even born. While the Empire thought they were dealing with a primitive species, humans had been quietly building the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. "Sir," his assistant asked, "are you certain about this? Once we begin, there is no going back." Dr. Park closed his eyes and thought about all the worlds the Empire had destroyed, all the species they had wiped out, all the children who had died screaming as their planets burned. "Atlas system, full activation," he said quietly. The computer responded immediately. "Atlas online. All systems ready. Awaiting final authorization." Dr. Park placed his hand on a scanner. His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight. "Of 2 centuries of human determination, authorization confirmed, God forgive us all." High above, Admiral Corvin was still laughing at humanity's feeble resistance, completely unaware that he had just walked into the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. The destruction of New York was meant to be a message. Admiral Corvin watched from his command bridge as his weapons turned the greatest human city into a sea of fire and twisted metal. Skyscrapers that had stood for centuries collapsed like dominoes, and millions of people fled in terror through streets filled with smoke and screaming. "Phase 1 complete," his weapons officer reported with satisfaction. "Human resistance is breaking down as expected." Corvin nodded, already planning which city would be next. London, perhaps, or Tokyo. He had learned that destroying population centers quickly broke the spirit of any species. After New York, the humans would surely surrender within hours, but then something impossible happened. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, his voice filled with confusion. "I am detecting strange readings from the local star." Corvin glanced at his screens without much interest. "What kind of readings?" "Gravitational fluctuations, sir. Massive ones. The star appears to be changing somehow." The Admiral laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. "Nonsense. These primitive humans can barely travel between their own planets. They certainly cannot affect their star." His science officer looked up from her instruments, her face pale with worry. "Sir, the readings are getting stronger. Whatever is happening, it is not natural." Corvin walked over to examine the data himself. The numbers made no sense. According to his instruments, something was manipulating the gravitational field around Earth's sun, creating artificial disturbances in the star's magnetic field. "This is impossible," he muttered. "No species has ever developed stellar manipulation technology. Not even the Empire has mastered that level of science." But even as he spoke, the star began to change. The sun's surface, normally a smooth ball of burning gas, started to show unusual activity. Massive magnetic storms swirled across its face, growing larger and more intense by the minute. Deep in space, invisible machines that had been waiting for decades finally revealed themselves. Gravitational lenses the size of small moons uncloaked around the solar system, their surfaces reflecting the light of the sun like mirrors. These devices had been built in secret over 2 centuries, hidden in the asteroid belt and beyond. The lenses began to move into position, creating a pattern around the sun that focused its energy like a magnifying glass, focusing sunlight. But instead of burning ants, this magnifying glass was aimed at the Empire's fleet. "Sir," the tactical officer shouted in panic, "the star is generating a massive solar flare, and it is being directed at us." Corvin stared at his screens in disbelief as a tongue of stellar fire erupted from the sun's surface. This was not a natural solar flare. It was perfectly focused, controlled, and aimed directly at his flagship. The plasma was moving at 90% the speed of light, carrying more energy than 1,000 planet-killing weapons. "Shields to maximum," he ordered, but even as he spoke, he knew it was useless. The concentrated solar plasma hit his flagship like the fist of a god. Energy, shields that could withstand nuclear bombardment, lasted exactly 3 seconds before they overloaded and collapsed. The hull of the massive warship, made from the strongest metals in the galaxy, began to melt like ice in a furnace. The bridge erupted in sparks and screaming as the ship's systems failed one by one. Corvin watched in horror as his crew was consumed by temperatures hot enough to melt steel. The air itself caught fire as the ship's atmosphere superheated. Lieutenant Choi Mina sat in Earth's command center, watching the destruction through cameras mounted on satellites. She had been born after the secret project began, raised from childhood to help operate humanity's ultimate weapon. "Target 1 eliminated," she reported calmly. "Moving to Target 2. The gravitational lenses shifted their position slightly, and another focused solar flare erupted from the sun. The second largest ship in the Empire's fleet disappeared in a ball of plasma so bright it could be seen from Earth's surface. "This is Fleet Admiral Vexon. To all ships," a panicked voice crackled over the communications. "We are under attack by some kind of stellar weapon. Request immediate evacuation." The response came not from the Empire, but from Earth itself. The voice was cold and emotionless, transmitted on frequencies the Empire thought were secure. "Evacuation." "Request denied," the human voice said. "You came to our system to commit genocide. We are simply giving you what you came here to find." One by one, the massive alien warships were consumed by their own star's fury. Ships that had conquered hundreds of worlds found themselves helpless against a weapon they had never imagined possible. The same sun that had warmed Earth for billions, of years had been turned into humanity's sword and shield. Sub-Commander Zeltrix tried desperately to retreat, but the human weapon was faster than his ships. A third solar flare caught his vessel as it tried to escape, turning it into expanding gas in seconds. "How is this possible?" Admiral Corvin screamed into his communicator as his own ship began to break apart. "No species has ever developed this technology." The answer came from Earth, delivered in the same cold, emotionless voice. "We had 200 years to prepare, Admiral. We studied every species you destroyed, learned from their mistakes, and decided that mercy was a luxury we could not afford. You taught us that the universe respects only strength." Within 6 hours, the mighty fleet that had conquered 300 worlds was reduced to nothing but expanding clouds of superheated gas drifting through space. The Empire's most powerful weapons, their most advanced ships, their most experienced commanders, all consumed by the fury of a star that humanity had learned to control. The same sun that gave life to Earth had become the instrument of the Empire's destruction, wielded by a species they had dismissed as primitive. In trying to destroy humanity, the Empire had walked into a trap 2 centuries in the making. As the last alien ship dissolved into plasma, Earth's star continued to burn steady and bright, no longer just a source of life, but a weapon beyond the Empire's darkest nightmares. The message arrived at the Empire's capital just as Emperor Vexthul was sitting down for his morning meal. A single transmission that would change everything. Admiral Corvin's entire fleet had been destroyed. Not defeated, not damaged, but completely annihilated down to the last ship. Emperor Vexthul stood in his golden throne room, staring at the holographic display that showed nothing but empty space where his mighty fleet should have been. 300 of his best ships, gone. 50,000 of his finest warriors, dead. All destroyed by a species he had considered barely more advanced than animals. "This cannot be accurate," he said to his communications officer. "Run the scan again." The scan came back the same. Where Admiral Corvin's fleet had been, there was now only debris and radiation, the signature of matter that had been heated to temperatures found inside stars. "Your Majesty," his military advisor approached carefully, "we have lost all contact with the Earth expedition. Long-range sensors confirm total fleet destruction." The Emperor's claws scraped against his throne as he gripped the armrests. In 800 years of Empire expansion, no species had ever destroyed an entire conquest fleet. Not one. Most worlds surrendered, after seeing just a fraction of the Empire's power. How did primitive humans accomplish this? He demanded. His science advisor, an old alien with too many eyes, shuffled forward with a data pad. We are detecting unusual readings from their star system, Your Majesty. Some form of advanced stellar manipulation technology. Impossible, the Emperor snarled. Our intelligence reports showed they barely had interplanetary travel. But even as he spoke, new reports were flooding in from across the Empire's territory. Communications officers throughout the throne room began receiving emergency transmissions from dozens of worlds. Your Majesty, one officer called out, Kelthara Prime is reporting unusual stellar activity. Zephyrin the Seven is detecting gravitational anomalies around their sun, reported another. Vexthul Station observes strange magnetic disturbances in their star system. The Emperor listened with growing alarm as reports came in from 47 different star systems across his empire. All were experiencing the same thing. Their stars were beginning to act strangely. What the Emperor did not know was that 30 years earlier, a human named Colonel Yoon Jisoo had died quietly in her sleep, taking with her the greatest secret in human history. She had designed self-replicating machines smaller than asteroids, programmed with one simple mission: travel to every star system controlled by the Empire and wait. These machines had been launched decades ago, disguised as natural space debris. They had drifted through the galaxy at sublight speeds, taking years to reach their destinations. Once there, they had hidden themselves near the Empire's suns, mimicking space rocks and cosmic dust. For 30 years they had waited in silence, monitoring quantum frequencies from Earth. They were programmed to activate only if they received a specific signal, a signal that meant Earth was under attack and humanity was fighting for its survival. That signal had been transmitted the moment Admiral Corvin's fleet entered Earth's solar system. Now scattered across 847 star systems, Colonel Yoon's machines were waking up. The first world to die was Kelthara Prime, a beautiful planet covered in purple forests and crystal cities. 12 billion Vialthic citizens lived there in peace, unaware that their sun was about to become their executioner. The hidden machines began their work, using gravitational manipulation to destabilize the star's magnetic field. What started as minor solar flares quickly escalated into complete stellar instability. Governor Kellex was hosting a dinner party when his science minister burst into the room with news that their sun was behaving strangely. Within 6 hours, the star's output had increased by 30%. Within 12 hours, the oceans began to boil. "Evacuate the planet," Governor Kellex ordered, but there was nowhere to go. The Empire's transportation ships could not carry 12 billion people, and there was no time anyway. Within 18 hours, the surface temperature of Kelthara Prime had risen beyond what any known life form could survive. The purple forests burned away to nothing. The crystal cities melted like ice. Every living thing on the planet died as their world became a ball of molten rock, but the planet itself remained intact, orbiting a star that continued to burn with deadly intensity. It became a perfect sphere of cooling lava, a monument to the dead. Back in the capital, Emperor Vexthul received the reports with growing horror. 1 world dead, then 3, then 10. The pattern was always the same: stellar instability followed by surface sterilization, leaving empty worlds circling unstable stars. "Your Majesty," his science advisor whispered, "we are detecting similar anomalies in more systems. The disturbances are spreading." "How many?" the Emperor asked, though he feared the answer. The advisor checked his instruments, his face growing pale. "All of them, Your Majesty. Every single star system in the Empire is showing signs of artificial stellar manipulation." Emperor Vexthul felt his blood turn to ice. 847 star systems, trillions of citizens, the greatest empire in galactic history, all threatened by machines built by a species they had dismissed as primitive. "How is this possible?" he whispered. His military advisor spoke quietly. "The humans must have been preparing for this for generations, Your Majesty. While we thought they were primitive, they were secretly building weapons beyond our understanding." The Emperor realized with dawning horror that humanity had not just learned to destroy fleets, they had learned to extinguish entire civilizations. And they had done it while leaving the worlds themselves intact, turning each planet into a memorial for the dead. As reports continued flooding in from across his dying empire, Emperor Vexthul understood that he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history, the systematic destruction of the greatest military power the galaxy had ever known, orchestrated by a species that had spent centuries preparing for this exact moment. The humans had not just defeated the Empire, they had doomed it to watch helplessly, as every world they had ever conquered became a lifeless monument to their own arrogance. Emperor Vexthul had never begged for anything in his 800 years of life. He had conquered worlds, destroyed civilizations, and ruled over trillions of beings across the galaxy. But now, as he watched his empire die star by star, he found himself doing something he thought impossible, pleading with the humans he had tried to destroy. The holographic communication chamber on Earth was the same room where Ambassador Lee had delivered humanity's simple refusal months earlier. But this time, it was the Emperor himself who appeared. As a flickering blue image, his once proud form now bent with desperation. "Please," he said, his voice breaking. "We withdraw all our demands. We will leave your solar system immediately. Just stop this destruction." The human who answered was not Ambassador Lee, but an elderly woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much. Director Bai Sumin had been part of humanity's secret project since she was a young scientist, and now she carried the weight of what her species had become. "Your Majesty," she said calmly, "it is too late for negotiations." "But billions are dying," the Emperor cried. "Entire worlds full of innocent people." Director Bai's expression did not change. "We spent 2 centuries watching you do exactly that to other species. 14 different civilizations, Your Majesty. We studied each one that you destroyed. We learned from their mistakes." The Emperor's hologram flickered as his transmission wavered. "We were wrong to threaten you. We were wrong about humans, but this destruction, it must stop." "Why?" Director Bai asked quietly. "When the Kelthari begged you to spare their children, did you stop? When the Zephyrian Council offered you their entire treasury for mercy, did you hesitate? When 14 different species pleaded for their lives, did you show them compassion?" Emperor Vexthul had no answer, because they both knew the truth. The Empire had never shown mercy to anyone. "Your Empire taught us a valuable lesson," Director Bai continued. "You showed us that in this galaxy, mercy is a luxury that civilizations cannot afford. You demonstrated that the only way to survive is to be stronger and more ruthless than your enemies." "But we were wrong," the Emperor shouted. "We can change. The Empire can learn to coexist." "Perhaps," Director Bai said, "but we decided long ago that we would never give you that chance." As the communication ended, Emperor Vexthul made one final desperate decision. He gathered every remaining ship in his empire, personal guards, cargo vessels, civilian transports, anything that could fly, and sent them all toward Earth in a massive suicide attack. If the humans wanted a war, he would give them a war. If his empire was going to die, he would take humanity with him. But the humans had been expecting this final attack for decades. The moment the Emperor's desperate fleet entered Earth's solar system, it triggered the ultimate protocol that had been programmed into every hidden machine across the galaxy. Captain Han Jiwon stood on the lunar observation deck, watching through telescopes as the Emperor's final fleet approached Earth. She had been born in the secret facilities beneath the Earth's surface, trained from childhood for this moment. "Sir," her communications officer reported, "all Empire vessels are in attack formation. They are targeting major population centers." "Activate final protocol," Captain Han ordered. Across the galaxy, 847 hidden machines received the signal simultaneously. Each one had been programmed with the same final instruction: if the Empire ever tried to destroy Earth, accelerate the stellar destruction process. What had been a slow death for the Empire's worlds now became instantaneous. Every star in Empire space began to die at exactly the same moment. Not the gradual stellar instability that had been killing their worlds one by one, but complete stellar collapse. Each sun began burning through its remaining fuel at an impossible rate, racing toward total burnout. Captain Han watched through her instruments as 847 suns across the galaxy began their death throes in perfect synchronization. The light from their destruction would take years to reach Earth, but the quantum sensors showed what was happening in real time. "Time to stellar burnout across all Empire systems?" she asked. 72 hours, sir," came the reply. "Exactly." The same time frame the Empire had given Earth to surrender. The same deadline that had started this war. Humanity had programmed their ultimate weapon with a sense of poetic justice. Emperor Vexthul's final attack lasted exactly 18 minutes. His desperate fleet, thrown together from whatever ships he could find, was no match for Earth's solar weapon. One by one, his vessels were consumed by focused stellar fire, just like Admiral Corvin's fleet had been months before. As the last Empire ship dissolved into plasma, Emperor Vexthul himself died aboard his flagship, watching his life's work burn. Away in the fury of Earth's weaponized sun, across the galaxy the Empire's worlds began to fall silent, not from conquest or rebellion, but from the simple fact that their stars were dying. Populations that had lived for thousands of years under the Empire's rule found themselves facing an enemy they could not fight: the death of the very suns that gave them life. Some worlds tried to evacuate, but there were trillions of people, and nowhere to go. Other worlds accepted their fate with dignity, spending their final days in peace as their skies grew dim. Within 72 hours, the greatest empire in galactic history had become nothing but empty planets orbiting dead stars. 847 star systems, silent and cold, monuments to what happened when a species underestimated humanity's capacity for patient, terrible vengeance. But Earth's star continued to burn bright and steady, a beacon of life in a galaxy that had learned to fear the species that refused to kneel. Humanity had not just survived the Empire's ultimatum, they had turned it into the Empire's epitaph.